Hello, everybody. Thank you all for being here. I'm so happy to see so many of you here and that you've chosen this hour to spend with us. My name is Shinta Hernandez, and I am the director of Molly, and I'm also the founding dean of the virtual campus at Montgomery College. Welcome to this webinar. This webinar is sponsored by the Maryland Online Leadership Institute. We're also known as Molly. MOLLI. So we appreciate that you're here. Just to give you a brief history of Molly, for many of you who may not be familiar with us, we are the professional development arm of Maryland Online, MOL. And this year, Molly is being significantly redesigned to include year-round workshops and webinars like this that are designed to help you enhance your knowledge and your leadership skills, specifically in online education and, of course, more broadly in higher education. So we're here to bring you the timeliest of topics and the most relevant of topics. And so all coming from a leadership lens. And so we hope that you too will find this webinar useful and applicable to your institution as well as your role in your institution. So I have another housekeeping that I want to share with you. So just 10 minutes before the end of the presentation, I'm going to put in the chat a post-webinar survey, and we are always looking for feedback. So please share with us your feedback of this webinar. And we also would love to learn ideas from you about future leadership webinar topics as well. As I mentioned, we're offering monthly webinars and workshops. So I'd love to get ideas from you. And I will also share other upcoming events that are happening throughout the year for the rest of the 2024 calendar year. So I will share all of that at the end. So, all right, now I have the honor and pleasure of introducing to you our presenter and our facilitator. So as you know, this webinar is called Leadership and Quality Assurance and Accreditation in Online Education. So I'm going to begin by introducing our facilitator. Ms. Suzette Spencer is Director of Library and Information Services at Montgomery College. She's been involved with Molly since her time in the residential program back in 2023. Ms. Spencer has over 25 years of library experience, and she's worked across 4 library systems before joining Montgomery College. She has served on national and regional library boards and has just been really impactful in the spaces that she occupies. And so while she was in the Molly residential program, she was one of 2 recipients of the Doug Gray Excellence and Leadership Award, which is a peer-reviewed award system. So again, congratulations, Ms. Spencer. Now, we are very fortunate as well to have Quality Matters CEO, Dr. Deb Adair, to be our presenter. Dr. Adair has more than 25 years of experience in higher education, teaching and administration, and nonprofit leadership and management consulting. She has been in a leadership role at Quality Matters since 2007. And in fact, Quality Matters began with a small group of colleagues in the Maryland Online Consortium. And now Quality Matters has become an internationally recognized quality assurance program for online and innovative digital teaching and learning environments. Dr. Adair has served on a number of advisory boards, including the WICHE Cooperative for Educational Technologies. And Dr. Adair is an expert in quality assurance for online education and has been a frequent keynote speaker, presenter, and author. So without further ado, let me turn the stage over to Dr. Deb Adair and Ms. Suzette Spencer.
Thank you, Dr. Hernandez, for hosting this webinar first, and to you, Dr. Adair, for joining us today to engage in this timely and much-needed conversation around quality assurance from a leadership perspective, and also to lend your expertise. So let's jump right in. So online learning leaders need to be strategic in the ways they connect and support broader institutional goals. How should we be thinking about strategy in relationship to quality assurance? That is, how do we make sure our quality assurance practices align with and drive to strategic institutional goals?
Thank you, Suzette, and thank you, Shinta, for the welcome. Hello, everybody. Before I jump into answer, I just want to apologize to everybody. My voice is never particularly smooth and strong, but I took a little vacation over Memorial Day weekend and came back with a head cold, which is such an old-fashioned thing. Like, who gets head colds anymore? There's so many more exotic things to get, but that's apparently what I came back with, was my reward for taking a little vacation. So I'm sorry for the amount of times I'm going to have to clear my throat today. But I am also going to share my screen, because I think it would be good to kind of walk through some visuals. Since this is a leadership group, I was thinking that you all are really charged with oversight, governance, making sure things are happening the way they should be happening. And it might be useful to have for me to share some mental models and visuals and frameworks and things that help you make sense out of all of the different activities and engagements that might be going on around online learning. So I came to this with this thought about let's kind of talk around some frameworks. So that's what I'm going to do today. So let me share my screen so I can answer Suzette's very good question. And you would think, with as amount of time I do this, that this would just be like this for me, but give me just a second, please.
Sure.
Okay, let's see. Go. And are you seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Oh,
Mhm.
good. So let me just go to, so this question I took as, this is really about strategic leadership. And so if you think about where quality assurance fits into this, to the larger strategic leadership that's happening at the institution, and really online has to fit into that too. A way to think about this is, how do you make the work that you're already doing for quality assurance really instrumental in driving to and being relevant for the broader institutional goals? And as leaders, I think it's useful to think about sort of a broader planning model about how this all comes together. And if there's one thing that we learned and doing the work with Quality Matters for the last 17 years, is that context really, really matters, right? Our little inside joke at Quality Matters is we work with, over 1,300 institutions, and there's over 1,300 ways to do QM, because it all has to be contextualized. So to do that and to align it with outcomes and the strategic goals, is really thinking about how those pieces come together. So, there are different purposes and principles that sort of guide even the strategic goals that an institution is pursuing. But also influencing those goals are going to be the whole institutional culture, resources, infrastructure. The size of your institution matters. The resources that the funding, and certainly the institutional culture, and then all of the institutional landscape. And I have a visual for that later, about where this work actually happens on the ground, is going to be influenced as well. But thinking about, like, what are the kinds of goals that quality assurance activities can influence. And so you can kind of think about this from on a continuum, from some very, very specific immediate goals, like we want to make sure that our that all of our faculty are using quality standards when they're developing online courses, or we want to make sure that when we put a course online, we know it's a quality course, right? So that's sort of at one level of the continuum. But when you can also use quality assurance to drive to improve student learning outcomes, to increased academic outcomes, and even the larger student outcomes that will appear in most institutions' strategic goals, like completion and persistence and employment and DFW rates. So, thinking about the goals and sort of the metrics that you would want to be able to demonstrate for quality assurance will help you kind of knit those two things together. And then, of course, doing that work is a whole nother ball of wax, because you have to be thinking about how you put the pieces together. And I think there's some questions coming that will allow us to kind of look at that more deeply. But I think being strategic about looking at what the institution's overall goals are, and then trying to align your quality assurance goals to do that. What part of this can you impact? And then thinking about how you're going to measure it and what the metrics are for that are really ways to move forward with this in a strategic kind of way.
Wonderful. I certainly believe the foundational key pieces are necessary before we can move forward with those goals to then achieve those outcomes. Thank you for that. So in moving to accreditation, in addition to the efficacy of QA practices for our broader institutional goals, we usually think about the need for internal quality assurance practices as directly linked to accreditation, which at Montgomery College, we are approaching accreditation season. And so how does QM's work link to accreditation? And how should leaders be thinking about linking their internal QA protocols for digital learning as meaningful evidence for institutional accreditation?
I'll just make the general statement that, of course, accreditation standards are very broad, right? They're across the institution. And then, it's about accumulating evidence across the institution to be able to support those accreditation standards. But QM has always focused on the teaching and learning piece. So all accreditors, including Middle States, they want you to be able to demonstrate that you have a rigorous, coherent, well-supported approach to ensuring an effective learning experience for students, right? So they want to look at what you're doing to ensure that teaching and learning, the aspects of the teaching and learning program at the institution is quality assured, that you have an internal process to make sure that this is all quality. So for QM specifically, we focus on the areas of making sure that the courses are well designed, that the learning objectives at the course and program level are aligned. That's one of our program review criteria. That the instructors are well prepared and supported, both in terms of QM contributes to that, both in terms of the array of professional development services that we provide, but also in terms of the criteria for program certification, for example. That's one of the very specific things that institutions have to be able to demonstrate. And that aligns directly with what accreditors are looking for. Whether you're using your course evaluation data to improve courses and how you're training faculty. And so that can be, we think about like end of course surveys and things like that. But if you're actually going through the process of reviewing courses, that information, that data about that process can be captured. You can look at it in the aggregate at the unit level, department level, institutional level, and use that to be able to make changes in the way that you may be, developing your courses, or the way that what you need to be focused on in terms of professional development for faculty. Where are the gaps? Where are the weaknesses? And so accreditors are looking to institutions to ensure they're doing that continuous improvement process. And then measuring what is the impact of students for all this. So, one of the challenges for QM is we don't have any access to student data at all. And so institutions have to be thinking about their various interventions and initiatives around quality and quality assurance, and then setting up a way to track and measure so that you can demonstrate what is the outcome or the impact of those activities. And that's something that's best thought about from the very beginning, right? When you're setting out your quality assurance protocols and processes, how are you going to measure whether this was impactful or not? these are all like pieces of the puzzle that accreditors are looking for. If you want to sort of a big picture framework, and like I said, this is what I'm trying to do, is trying to give some big picture frameworks here. For digital learning, we have developed what we call the continuum of excellence for quality assurance. And it really is sort of a logic model about how to think about the work that you do in quality assurance. And it gets progressively more rigorous as you go up the CEQA. And you can align what accreditors are asking for or looking for along this framework. So accreditors want to know that your institution has a process where you're controlling quality. You're controlling quality of the courses, of the teaching, the delivery of the courses, of student support, of all the things, right? And so you can begin to demonstrate it by identifying the fact that you've got quality criteria, quality standards that you're using and how you're using them. Do you require them for, like, do you require instructors to develop their courses using a quality standards, quality framework? Do you review the courses according to that? Do you require faculty to be trained in delivering online courses before you let them teach those courses? And so what are the standards that you use to do that? That's sort of the first level of the CEQA and helps you demonstrate that you are controlling what's going on to the accreditors. The next level really is about having a systematic way, a planful, systematic way to demonstrate compliance with those standards, right? So it's one thing to have a standard set, and to be talking about this and socializing the standard set. It's another thing to apply it in a systematic way, right? Where you've got a plan schedule, you have people trained in how to do this, and you're regularly ensuring that courses are, I'm using QM, the rubric as an example, but you could do this for training, for instructor training, you could do it for a variety of things. What is your systematic process that you do? What does that look like? And what's your schedule for doing so? And what's your evidence that you are actually executing on that systematic process? So accreditors want to see that you're compliant, not just that you have standards. Now, ideally, they also want to see this continuous improvement process, right? Because this is peer review. This is about the institution taking responsibility for the quality at their institution. And so part of that is being able to demonstrate some kind of a continuous improvement process. And to do that, you need data. This is what I was referring to before, right? That as you begin to implement these quality processes, to kind of track and analyze and aggregate to see where you have gaps in your processes that you can address it. If you can show how you're doing that in a systematic way, and that you're actually changing your development processes, you might even change your standards and goals based on what you're learning. So being able to demonstrate is important. Accountability. So as we go up, this gets more rigorous. Mm-hmm. So how are you demonstrating I'll use a business term here, ROI, because that's, we're in a place now where everybody's talking about our ROI. And it's not just ROI for the student, but for the work that you're even doing for quality assurance. What is the return on that? And really, one way to look at that is, how are you using these practices to achieve these institutional goals that we talked about at the beginning, right? And any external expectations that you have. What are you, and how are you demonstrating that? Do you have a third party review? Do you have, one thing you can show with Quality Matters is that you have an external objective third party review that you are meeting particular goals if you have goals set for quality courses and so on. But you can do that for institutional goals as well. And that's what that gets back to, that strategic piece about, you know, here are the institutional goals. Here's what we're doing for quality assurance, and here's what the outcomes are for this process. And so having decided at front what your goals are that you're achieving, that you're pursuing, and then being able to demonstrate that you've done it is a really important piece of accountability. And then this last stage is really where this actually becomes an organizational change initiative, because quality assurance is a lot of work. Any of you out there that are doing this, right? It's a lot of work. It's not very sexy. It's I'm surprised we have as many people here as we do today, right? But it needs to be done. It's hard work. So the more that the institution can have policies and protocols in place that support that sustain that quality culture, the more it becomes this is just the way we do business. So that means providing enough resources, and as leaders to think about how you're resourcing. What is the cost, both dollar wise and labor, to be able to do an effective job with quality assurance? How are you rewarding people for doing that work? If it's always other duties as assigned, it's hard to demonstrate that you have a real commitment to quality, that you have a quality culture. If it becomes rewarded in promotion and tenure, or recognized in promotion and tenure, recognized in various kinds of institutional awards, getting written into job descriptions, those are all ways to help sustain that the quality culture. And so you can see, as you kind of lever up this continuum, the more robust it is, and the more that you're able to there we go. I lost my last piece. That is really transformational. You've changed how your institution approaches the work that you do, because it's always quality first, and you're rewarding people for doing that work. And so this is, again, this is easier to lay out, and it's meant just to give you a model and a visual. It's hard to do this, but if you think about, like, when have I done enough? Well, you've already got to always have a next phase to do, right? And thinking about it this way.
Wonderful. So Deb, this was very insightful. It sounds like it's not just about ticking a box to say we have this in place, but really embedding it in the culture, and tying it into the everyday work that we do, but making sure collectively we are all doing this work, and it's ongoing work. It's not just for accreditation or something that's upcoming, that it is a part of the everyday work that we do. So thank you for that. So let's pivot a bit and talk about communication. How do you facilitate effective communication between QA teams and other departments, such as course development, faculty development, student support, marketing, all of those components? And how do you do so in ways that cultivate a culture of quality across the organization?
Yeah, and so I have another visual for you, and it's very colorful. To think about this. So this is feeding into what I said at the beginning about how context matters. And so I think that people outside of an institution don't realize how many constituents and stakeholders there are to be engaged with. That if you have a team, and probably a small team, doing the quality assurance piece for online learning, there are a lot of people that they need to interact with throughout the institution, and a lot of areas that they need to pay attention to do it well. And this is our QA implementation, quality assurance implementation landscape. And Dr. Bethany Simonich, who is QM's director or vice president of innovation and research, has built this out of some research that she did. And really to help think about the hard work of doing quality assurance. So in this framework, if you think about external stakeholders could still be within the institution, but at broader levels. These, I guess that's yellow, the yellow bubbles at the top and at the very bottom are like stakeholders that are stakeholders to the work that's going on in the institution for quality assurance. But each of these vertical columns of people, communications, policy and guidelines, various supports for faculty and students, the processes that you have to support, and evaluation. These are all sort of levers that you have to think about changing if you're doing quality assurance, and you need to communicate and you need to collaborate across the units. And so what we did here initially was to highlight the little cells that are highlighted are ones that QM was specifically trying to support. But all of this, and this is, this is our direction, right, in terms of where we move as an organization, is how we help support these other levers that need to be manipulated. But in thinking about your team, it's useful. We've used this to be able to talk to teams about like who's doing what role for online learning and for quality assurance and online learning. And how is that role being? How are those roles being distributed across the unit? And are you working more as efficiently as you can? And are you just missing some external collaborations that you need to be thinking about to do this well? And so that's really was the purpose of building this framework, is to be able to think about, for all of the people, right, that you need to be engaging with to be able to build and support and quality assure an online program. All of the communications that you need to be impacting or managing, and the different policies and guidelines that have to be in place, and so on. The purpose of this wasn't to walk through this in detail, but just to say this is such a complex landscape for folks in online education, especially when you're trying to put together some particular protocols to ensure quality, right? So this all has to be managed by the people that, by the teams that are doing this work. And sometimes having a visual and a map as a leader to be able to kind of go through and think about where are our gaps, who's doing what work. We've found in some cases where we've had, we've used this with teams, and it really helped reallocate tasks among the teams, because they were in some cases overlapping in some areas because multiple people were doing that job, and then not addressing some of the others, right? So being able to spell these things out can be really useful.
Wonderful, thank you. So Deb, I'm going to apologize. I have to circle back because I missed the question on accreditation and compliance. My apologies. Thank you for being so gracious. So in circling back and speaking about accreditation, compliance, and regulation, the U.S. Department of Education has proposed changes to distance education regulation that will create compliance challenges for most institutions if they come into force. So what are some of the implications for quality assurance practices, and how might leaders think about addressing these?
Yeah, this is an opportunity for me to be able to say, I hope that everybody on this call is aware of where negotiated rulemaking ended and what the Department of Education is considering moving forward as proposed changes, because they will have significant impact on distance education. But first, I wanted to kind of give this landscape, because in the U.S., we have the triad of accreditation, the Department of Education, and the states, and they all have responsibility for quality, and they all have a role to play in setting, state regulation, state licensing, federal policy, and then the accreditors having to be able to be the you know, the evaluator and the body that ensures that federal policy is being adhered to. But within that, you know, Quality Matters plays that role for within quality assurance for distance and online education. We've always been at the course and program level, not at the institutional level. And there may be some things that we'll do at an institutional level going forward, but we'll never be an accreditor. They have a specific role they're playing. And then NC Sarah, I think everybody on this call is probably familiar with NC Sarah and the reciprocity agreement that they oversee that allows institutions to serve students from, you know, any state in the US except Canada, I mean, except California, without having to actually research and adhere to those particular state regulations, right? So reciprocity is a really important tool for us in distance education. And that's one of the things that might change with the new regulations. And so I think as a leader, it is really important that we're paying close attention to the set of things that are being proposed and actually taking action, you know, urging your institution to write or call about these regulations. And I think I can't see the chat. Suzette, I don't know if you
Yes, I did drop the link in the chat for those interested in the call to action that Deb is referring to.
Yeah. So WCET has been very focused on following the regulations and the proposed regulations. And they have a number of blog posts that really go into detail to explain those. Now, Quality Matters is collaborating with the other nonprofit organizations that form the National Council for Online Education. So that's WCET, UPSEA, OLC, and QM. We've all signed on to letters that are being sent and have been sent to the Department of Education to address some of the proposed changes in where we think that they could be harmful or could be further clarified. But there is, I think, the role of the individual institutions and the leadership of the distance learning arms are really, really important voices to be to be paying attention to what's happening and to make some outreach in the ways that you can, because the things that state reciprocity in particular may get undermined, and this would make it very challenging to for most institutions that serve students from many states. And really, institutions only have so many resources. So the more that has to be focused on sort of these compliance level kinds of activities and tasks, the fewer the resources for focusing on real, you know, the quality and teaching and learning piece that we all care so deeply about. And so I think that the potential for the distraction in terms of time, attention, and money is huge right now. And I would really urge everybody to, if you're not familiar with some of the proposed changes, to go to that site. It's very well explained, and to think about making your voices heard, and so that the Department of Education is aware of the impact that it can have on institutions.
Thank you for that awareness, Deb. Certainly keeping it on our radar. And for those on the webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. At the end, we'll have Q&A, so we can certainly get to your questions as soon as we wrap up. So Deb, the next question I have for you, given the online learning trends we are learning about from the Chloe report. And so if you're like me, still learning about Quality Matters and quality assurance, the Chloe report is an acronym for Changing Landscape of Online Education. And referring to the reports, what are the implications for quality and quality assurance efforts at institutions?
Yeah, I'm glad to be able to show a little bit of the data. Chloe, we've been doing Chloe now for the last 8 or 9 years, and we just have, I always lose track. I think it's Chloe 9 that was just,
Yes, I did look that up.
Yeah.
It's Chloe 9.
yeah. And so we're not, we're in the analysis and report writing phase of that one, so I don't have I can't show you any data from that. But we do this this national survey with EduVentures, and now we just brought on EduCause as a partner in this work too. And we've been tracking what's been happening in the field, and so I've picked out a few things that I think would be interesting to know, given that this is a talk about quality assurance and quality practice, because Chloe is larger, broader than that, about all the management of online. So I'm focusing in on a couple of data points that I think would be interesting given this talk. So this outcome about when institutions are looking ahead about how they are going to pursue future online students, the number one way that they're doing that is by adding new online programs. And this is not a new finding, but it's just continued to accelerate. And that, so there we go, put that down there. Oops, sorry about that. Let me go back here. Why is it not letting me go back? Now, give me a second here. I have, whoops, on crazy. Let's do this here. Go back. There, are you seeing my study?
Yes.
Okay. I won't touch anything now. And of course they're, close behind is conducting market research to determine in-demand degrees. And I just saw coming out of the Georgetown Workforce Education Center, a study that says that there's a big gap or mismatch between the lower than a bachelor's level kinds of certificates and degrees and non-degree kinds of awards for what the labor market is going to need locally and regionally. There's a big mismatch that that institutions should be thinking about ways to focus in on local and projected labor market needs to be able to be thinking about what they're offering to the community. Even with that, and that's looking more holistically, right? We know that the COLOs, the Chief Online Learning Officers, are saying they are conducting market research to determine what the in-demand degrees are going to be. And they are offering new credential and micro-credential programs. So this work is happening, and maybe it's that the COLOs are more attuned to what those needs are than in the general educational marketplace. But if you look at 66% say that the new online programs is the way they're going to do this, the market is getting very competitive, right? If everybody is bringing in new online degrees and our enrollment growth is flat or slowing, we're going to have an increasingly competitive market. And so thinking about how do you stand out if you're bringing new degrees online, how do you differentiate what you're offering? How do you make your offerings the ones that students want to enroll in? And so that's a question that, my answer would be differentiating based on quality. So, and I have a slide, we'll talk about that in a minute, what's actually happening. Another data point from Chloe is that there's a bit of a lag between the strategic priorities of the institution, and then rising student demand or perceptions of student demand. And this is a real opportunity actually for colos. So we have 39% saying our strategic priorities are consistent with rising online demand. We see this happening and this is what our priority is. 10% say the priorities are consistent, but we're having a hard time keeping up, right? 36% say we are re-examining our strategic priorities in light of demand. So this is a real opportunity for colos to have a seat at the table and to be able to have an impact on the strategic priorities that the institution is going to pursue. You are the experts, right, for the direction that that we're seeing with student demand for online education. So as these strategies begin to be codified and developed, colos need to have a seat at the table so that they can influence those changes. So, and we hope that included in those strategic priorities aren't just about developing online programs, which I think superficially that's an easy sell. The harder sell is figuring out how to do this in a demonstrably quality fashion. So what we're finding in this, because we asked this question, we asked them about what they're doing in terms of their quality practices and how are they talking about it. Let me see if I can move this here. I don't know if this blocks you or not. So the green is where they're telling us, or the red is, they're saying we do this. This is our practice. Each of these things we are. So 64% said they have a commitment to reliable tech support for online students. 64% say they're focused on quality online teaching and have things in place to ensure that. They have QA benchmarks. They have quality of online options for academic support. So pretty strongly, again, not as high as I would even want, but you know, we have a 64%, between 51% and 64% of the respondents said, yes, we're doing this work, this quality work. Far fewer talk about that with their students. So that ranges from like 10% to 32%, depending on what the quality factor is here. Say they talk about it with their students. They don't let their students know. They're not letting their students know the work that they're doing to ensure quality, and they're certainly not using it to recruit new students. So if you put those two pieces of information together, that the market's getting really, really competitive for online programs, and you need to differentiate. And then you're doing this quality work, but you're not using it to differentiate. It seems like there's a real missed opportunity there, right? And so, you know, we've termed this, Dr. Simonich used this term, quiet quality, to kind of talk about the work is getting done. It's just not being used in the way that the institutions need to think about doing that, because it's going to make a difference in a crowded marketplace. So that's, you know, and putting the pieces together like this for Chloe is one of the things that we can then come up with some recommendations for you all, and this is one of them. Talk about what you're doing. Tell your students what you're doing, and you know, tell your stakeholders. Tell your board of regents. Tell folks what you're doing, because not everybody is doing it, and it's a way to differentiate.
Thank you, Deb. That's a very astute point. Quiet quality. I'll be sure to remember that. And so, of course, this conversation wouldn't be complete if we did not touch on IA and its role in QA. IA and its role in QA. Too many letters.
Yeah.
So how will AI technologies be integrated into quality assurance processes? What policies have you established to guide the ethical and effective use of AI in QA? And how are you thinking about balancing the roles of human expertise in AI in quality assurance?
Yeah, so even though I know that this question was coming, I would say, this is still a work in progress for most of us, right? We're still all trying to figure out how to innovate and how to do it responsibly. So, we have so our organization has we have internal committees trying to walk through this. We have developed an ethics statement about how what our position is with the use of AI and how we are working forward with it. But the reality is AI has a lot of potential for the work of quality assurance because there's so much labor in doing the work of quality assurance right now. And because it's so laborious, it's expensive to do. So the potential to be able to find ways to use artificial intelligence to reduce that workload for the work of quality assurance is very attractive. And so we're doing what we're doing right now, frankly, is just doing some outreach. We're working with one particular institution to try to get a grant to do this work about looking at this intersection between how humans and AI would work together in a responsible way in the work of quality assurance. Because we know that first of all, it's hard to even talk about AI very broadly. So if we talk about like large language models and those kinds of things, we know that there are accuracy issues, bias issues, and what we're looking at now is that there's evolving and nascent frameworks for this human AI intersection that we want to be able to build on, to look at ways we could do this work. Because what we don't see is that we're going to get to a place where you can click a button and okay, it'll just everything, the AI will review those courses and everything will be fine, right? But there's a lot of meaningful ways to reduce the labor of doing that work. But we've also got to think about how AI is being used to develop courses from the start, right? And you can use quality standards and feed those in to those tools. But there still needs to be human judgment on the other side when those come out. And so that's really what our near midterm kinds of plans are to look at ways we can do this effectively. So we're meeting with most of the innovation really happens at the institutions, right? So we have folks who are really been doing some experimentation and are bringing to us some ideas. We've got this grant search work that we're doing with one of our institutions in Silicon Valley. So they've kind of already developed some prototypes. Oh, we need some funding to move it forward. So all I can say at this point is, one, that we will be able to use AI to significantly reduce the workload, but it will never replace the human judgment that is needed, because these courses are essentially it's not transactional, right? It's an interaction, it's an engagement experience, and so we've got to figure out the right way. So we're along with all of you, we're still trying to figure this out.
Absolutely. It's certainly where innovation meets integrity and finding a delicate balance to get that done in a ethical way. So I certainly concur with wanting to take your time to get this work done. It's not a race. So
Thank you for that, because I sometimes feel that though, all of you on the call, you kind of feel like I got to get moving on this, but it's not a race.
Right, absolutely. And so as we start to wrap up our final question, what does QM see as the QA needs for the future in digital learning and higher education? And what role might leaders need to play?
Well, I think what we're going to see is more of what we're already seeing, which is there's that line between fully online and fully on campus is really continuing to blend and become more and more muddied. And so we're really trying to do two things. We're trying to, one, to really look at the tools we are providing and make them easier to use, to make them, to be able to sort of scaffold into some of the things that we're doing. And so we hope to have some things to show in the second half of this year about that, right? Being able to show this. We should be able to do this work incrementally, and we need to do it that way because it's going to need to be applied to a lot of variations on a theme, right? In terms of what's online, what's in person, what's blended, what does that look like? And so we're really mindful of that, but we're also on the other side of it, we're trying to think broadly about the internal quality assurance work that institutions need to do, not just a set of standards to evaluate an online course, but more broadly, what does your quality assurance processes look like? And because they should be able to be inclusive enough to serve whatever direction that you're going in terms of online, right? And we know that there are certain practices that are better than others. Like I showed you the sequence, right? In terms of it's just a logic model. What you can think about, what are the different pieces that you need to build into a quality assurance, internal quality assurance practice, because that is what you need to show accreditors. Not just this cobbling together of different pieces of evidence, but what is your whole quality assurance process internally? So that's what QM is focused on now for the future, is what would be a 360-degree look at quality assurance at the practices that are happening at an institution. So I think that's where we're headed as an organization.
Outstanding. So I will open it up for questions at this point. Thank you for that, Deb. So we can open it up for questions. And I did see one in the chat. So I'll pose it to you, Deb. Any particular thoughts on how quality assurance in digital education has matured, mutated, or otherwise evolved in the 20+ years since QM was launched?
Wow.
No pressure.
So all right, so you're going to hear my perspective as a quality assurance person, a quality person. So I think the broader understanding of like course design, right, and what are best practices in course design, that is much more widely understood now than it ever was when we started, right? We were very innovative. Maryland Online, that birthed QM, was very innovative. And this thought that there should be an interinstitutional definition, right, that people can agree on. And that really is what helped QM evolve. Now what we're seeing is people are really comfortable with the fact that they understand what quality looks like for online courses. But it's not necessarily being executed the way that it really should be, right? Because there's always a balance between your institutional context and the need to have sort of a interinstitutional level, right? You gotta make changes to make it work in your institution, but then what are you giving up when you do that? And so what happens sometimes is, life happens and priorities change, and it's so easy to lose your momentum with your quality practices. And so, especially right now when there's so many needs and so many, I'll say distractions, but we need to be doing more with skill-based work. We need to be into micro-credentials. We need to be evolving with AI. We need. It's hard to stay focused. And so I think that's really where 20 years ago, online was seen as new. And everybody had that story about all the students they were going to help with online education. And now that's sort of, it's hard. We've lost the narrative a little bit. And because we've got so much work to do. And so I think it would be good to get that narrative back, that student-centered narrative about why we're doing what we do.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions for Dr. Adair while we have her here? Okay. So seeing no other questions in the chat, Deb, thank you so much for your perspective, your leadership perspective on quality assurance and how and what we can do as an institution and internally as members of the Montgomery College community to really foster a collective process for how we do this work, and certainly for the committee that will be working on this towards accreditation. The work and the resources that you've shared with us hopefully will be helpful to them. So thank you so much. And I guess Shinta, at this time, I'll turn it back to you.
Great, wonderful webinar. Thank you so much, Deb. This has been terrific. And as Suzette pointed out, so many of us in this Zoom room, this is very timely as we begin thinking about our own accreditation and our own self-study. So we appreciate it so much. Suzette, thank you for your skillful facilitation. You asked some very important questions here, so you hit everything on the head here. Once again, thank you all for being here and spending your hour with us. Please stay tuned for more Molly events in the very near future. I also posted in the chat 2 links. One link is to the post-webinar survey. We would love to hear your thoughts, particularly on what other future Molly leadership topics we might be able to offer. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts there. And then if you are around on Thursday, June 27th, Montgomery College is organizing a Molly event, a Molly retreat. We will be at the Germantown campus all day. This is an in-person retreat, and we are going to be offering a whole host and array of leadership topics and activities that I'm sure will help all leaders from all levels really learn their skills, enhance their skills in the space in higher education and online education. So please RSVP if you are around, and we would love to have you here. Thanks so much, Deb, and thank you so much, Suzette, for your time and your knowledge. And everybody else, see you all around.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.